If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com. The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, big aviation concerns continue as the government shutdown drags on. And flights are getting cut at 40 major airports across the country. Air traffic tomorrow in a matter of hours is going to be cut by 4%. That is because so many air traffic controllers, thousands of them, have now gone with weeks of out pay. No money for weeks, at least about a month. And for many of them, that has been very difficult for them financially, stress-wise, fatigue. It has now been 2 pay periods that they have missed. And, of course, the FAA is saying they're deeply concerned about the fatigue levels rising. And, of course, they got to be concerned as we're heading into the holidays. It's still a few weeks away, but still. They are making preparations should this shutdown not end anytime soon. It's the longest in U.S. history. And then they're going to go from a 4% cut in flights. And we just found out they're going to go to a 10% ultimately within a few days. So this is causing massive flight delays, massive cancellations. They will indeed right now be cut. Because what they need to do is just trim the number of flights because they don't want to put Americans at risk. So this is a big, huge, serious concern. Meantime, everybody also talking about Zohran Mamdani and the elections. And of course, the comments about Mamdani going all the way to Washington. Here is House Speaker Mike Johnson, who talked about what Mamdani's victory means.
Zohran Mamdani is without a doubt the biggest win for socialism in the history of the country, and it is the biggest loss for the American people. He is truly a committed Marxist. And the results of that race tell you everything you need to know about where the Democrats and their party are headed. From the backbench to their leadership, Democrats have fallen in line behind the socialist candidates. Hakeem Jeffries, as you know, is the highest-ranking Democrat in the House. He gave his full blessing to Mamdani and his socialist agenda. Chuck Schumer, the highest-ranking Democrat in the Senate and the highest-ranking Jewish leader in America, flirted with endorsing Mamdani all the way to the bitter end. Never mind the fact that Zohran has embraced anti-Semitic rhetoric and promised to arrest the Prime Minister of Israel if he visits New York City again. And then there's President Obama, who called Mamdani over the weekend to extend his praise and act as a sounding board for the young socialist. You can't make this stuff up. The man who made healthcare unaffordable with his own socialist scheme is advising the man whose false promises will surely make life unlivable for millions of New Yorkers who cannot afford to flee the city.
Great analogy there by the Speaker of the House. And then earlier today, we talked to Rod Blagojevich. He is, of course, the former governor of Illinois. And we talked with him about what happens when you have a bad mayor and what a bad mayor can do to a great city. And we talked about what happened in Chicago, the Windy City, of which he knows well. And he said, boy, oh boy, it's a disaster. You can imagine with Brandon Johnson there. There's no doubt about it. And he said, sadly, that's what's ahead and more for the Big Apple. Take a listen. Explain also like what a bad mayor can do. You know, you guys have had obviously a 1-2 punch. You had Lori Lightfoot, who I thought was the worst mayor. And then along came this other guy, Brandon Johnson, who makes Lori Lightfoot look like Charles Bronson. I mean, this guy is like completely out of control. And yet now we have Mamdani, who has some of the very same policies and vitriol. And I actually think he's even further to the left of Brandon Johnson, which is really concerning.
No, I think you're right. I think he is further to the left of Brandon Johnson. You know, Brandon Johnson wants to impose a big head tax on businesses in Chicago. And this could be the final blow to basically chasing, the business community out of the city. And it's what the city of Chicago is the foundation of it is the business community, and the fact that historically Chicago has been a place with Democratic mayors like Daley and others that were friendly to business. Now these Democrats are anti-business, and they it isn't just rhetoric that they want to tax people of a lot of money. They want to tax everybody. And we have in Chicago high property taxes, astronomically high property taxes. And what do we get for that? We get high crime. So I'm afraid, you guys in New York are going to get a lot of what we have here. And all I can tell you is don't give up. Keep fighting. The good news is I think more and more people in our city realize that this kind of leadership has failed and is flawed and failed. And it's very likely that in the next election, I can't imagine Brandon Johnson will be elected mayor again, though you never know, because the demographics in the city of Chicago and New York, the big cities, have changed. And what's happening is a lot of young people, well-intentioned, they've gone to school, they've been proselytized by, liberal professors who have no life experience, and they're teaching the students to pretty much hate America, the land of opportunity, and somehow that the idea that you can get ahead in America is a bad thing. So they are moving into big cities from suburbs, and it'll take a little while before life experience teaches them how the real world works. And in the meantime, we got to struggle through some of these elections where these far-left Democrats are winning. However, the good news is that in America, where, voters across the heartland of America and all about our country, excluding the big cities, they appreciate and realize what our country is really all about. And what this is doing to the Democratic Party is that it's radicalizing it, and it's chasing moderate Democrats out. And even in your election, Cuomo got better than 40% of the vote, and he ran as an independent. And this guy barely got 50%, and he ran as a Democrat in a Democrat city. So there's hope that a lot of the traditional Democrats, the Mayor Daley type Democrats, the Bill Clinton type Democrats, will not remain members of this radical party. And Trump is rebuilding the Republican Party as a party that's looking out for working people. And hopefully his big tent will grow even bigger with his new pro-working class Republican Party that Trump has created.
Very good perspective. But right now, it looks like things are definitely down and out. By the way, Zohran Mamdani taking a lot of heat for in a new video that he just put out. He posted a video on X where he detailed the transition period would look like and essentially asking them for help, asking for donations from supporters, saying that his supporters, that while he'd asked them to stop sending donations, he was asking them for help in any way they could. Explained that the money would be required to hire experts for infrastructure and other things. So he's already asking for money, and he hasn't even taken over Gracie Mansion yet. You can't make it up. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Joaquin in Pennsylvania, line 5. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Good evening, Rita. First of all, I want to say to Robert, be careful of what you wish for, because you live in that communist state of New York, and you might just get exactly what you were asking for. So, but you know something? I was complaining to my buddy Leon earlier that if I had to hear one more clip of Mamdani on the radio, I might turn the radio off. He just makes me want to scream. And then Leon had the bright idea. He had a good idea. He suggested I should ask you to play some bad mariachi music. We could use that as a palate cleanser. Oh, yes.
You know what? I have to find that really bad mariachi music. Remember from it was a couple months ago. Remember, it was at a rally. And we'll find that. We're going to work on that, Joaquin. In the meantime, what do you make of him? He's already asking for money. And what a brazen guy that he's sitting there saying Trump should be calling me. Trump should be doing this. How dare Trump do this with Snap? I mean, he's already criticizing Trump, and also that he thinks as a mayor of any city in America that he's the one who deserves the call. And meanwhile, he's a left-wing loon.
Now, you know what? If I was Donald Trump, President Trump, maybe he's listening, I would ignore him. Okay, I would make him come begging to see me, okay? And then I'd give him an inauguration surprise the day after give them let them go inauguration day, and I'd have a big ICE raid the day after. One well beyond his wildest expectations.
Well, that's what I'm waiting. I'm waiting for Tom Homan to say, you know what? I need to pay a little visit there to New York and amp things up. Maybe they could have a reunion, because remember that whole thing, Joaquin, when he was screaming at Tom Homan when he showed up in Albany? Remember, it was like, who is this left-wing loony crazy person screaming? And it turns out, it's the mayor-elect now of New York City. I mean, he was so crazy and so nutty. And can you imagine? He will just go crazy. I mean, he's already going crazy. He went crazy minutes after his acceptance speech. During that speech, he went crazy. And yet, can you imagine when it really gets to the point where they do a raid on New York City? Or they start cracking down on crime, like they've been trying to clean up the streets, in Chicago and in Washington, D.C. This is going to be a mess, right, Joaquin? I mean, this guy is going to be out there and like thumbing the nose at Trump, all at the expense, I believe, of New York City safety.
Oh, without a doubt. And something, if Hochul gets reelected, I think that New York State needs to be excommunicated from the country. And, as far as the DSA goes, I would call it the DISA, the Democratic Islamic Socialists of America.
Great point. Great point. How do you like these young girls cheering about Sharia? I mean, isn't that bizarre?
All right. First thing is that I don't know if they understand this. It takes 4 men to validate a rape accusation under Sharia law. Okay. You can't bring a rape accusation unless you got 4 males as witnesses. So obviously, rape doesn't happen under Sharia law. And it's the same thing with domestic violence. Domestic violence is nothing more than a Muslim husband reprimanding, his disobedient wife. So they have no idea what they're asking for and what they're cheering for.
I know, isn't that's why I found that so reprehensible to see these young girls cheering for that. I mean, they are so completely out of touch. And just, you're right. You brought up a good point. How about, the honor killing? Remember, like if they don't like who their husband married, or if the husband cheated, they still blame the wife. I mean, this is like Stone Age.
And the genital mutilation of the girls also.
Yep.
So that they can't enjoy sex.
Right.
And the other thing too is, 24% of New Yorkers are Democrat socialists. That's got to really fall in line. The educational system really needs to be investigated, because we've allowed this to be overtaken by communists, Marxists, by Islamists, teaching all these kids all this anti-American mindset. And this can't be allowed to keep going on. And as a matter of fact, if anybody really knows any history, they would understand that Islam actually is, quite frankly, responsible for the slave trade. So if the African-American community actually really knew about Islam, they would shun them also. And the same thing with these young American girls, because they have no idea what they're asking for. They
are completely out of touch. Great points, Joaquin. We're going to work on that sound. We're going to work on that singing for you. Joaquin, thank you very much. So keep listening. We'll try to find it for you there. Let's go to Liz in Florida on line 3, 1-800-848-9222. Go ahead, Liz.
Hi, Rita. Thank you so much for taking my call. Everyone is saying that the mayor-elect cannot implement all his promises. However, it's not what he can't do, it's what he can do. And Israel is always in the middle of it all. First Israel, then the Jews. Then there'll be signs that say no Jews allowed. The crazy anti-Semites will be able to get away with assaulting men and boys with yarmulkes. And it's a really very, very scary time for not just the Jewish people, but everyone that doesn't believe in this communist, socialist, anti-American, anti-Semitic, pro-Hamas agenda. And Rita, I personally am afraid to travel to the city as of January 1st, which makes me sad because I love the theater, the opera, and the kosher restaurants.
You don't feel safe coming to New York City because of this guy's policies?
No, for sure not. I mean, I don't even know how many of these kosher restaurants will even stay in business because anti-Semitic crime will become a common occurrence, and there won't be any police officers to arrest anyone. And many, many Jewish families now are leaving the city. And, I mean, someone has to stop him. There's got to be a way to find something that he's doing that's illegal before it's too late, because he can do damage the very first day he takes office.
Well, that's why even if, say, a Republican becomes mayor, and that's an if, obviously, because right now it's a Democrat, Kathy Hochul, who seems very much in line with Mamdani. Even if they get in, it's still going to be over a year. So that's a lot of pain. That's a lot of pain. In the meantime, you can do a lot of damage, and then at least a Republican, governor can do a bit of a backstop. They can, potentially remove him if they want to. But then it gets into a lot of other issues because there are a lot of other people that are in that position, or the number two is a pretty crazy guy too. Not as crazy as this guy. I don't know if anybody's as crazy as this guy. But there are so many issues right now, and then we'll see where it goes. We're going to see who he puts in his platform too. I mean, that's the other thing. Who's he going to put, as his deputy mayors? Who's he going to put as his, will it be Jessica Tisch as the chief of police? Will it be Jamal Bowman, of all people, the alarm puller, as the education, chief in New York City? I mean, what a disaster. Who's anti-Semitic too? I mean, I don't blame you, Liz, and that saddens me until this guy gets put in line and there's some sort of checks and balances on his policies. It is concerning, and that's really, really sad. But your message is so powerful, Liz. Let's make sure we stay in touch, and let's hear a lot more as what happens between now and January 1st for sure. 1-800-848-9222. You just heard Liz, who's Jewish, say she doesn't want to come to New York after Mamdani becomes mayor. That's a powerful statement.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com. The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Wow, that was a very powerful statement from Liz from Florida, who called in and said she's concerned about coming to New York. She doesn't want to come to New York after January 1st when Zohran Mamdani becomes mayor. If that doesn't speak volumes, she lives in Florida and obviously has been to New York many, many times. But New York may look very different. And also, by the way, who knows what's going to happen between now and then? If these Democratic socialists with their crazy anti-Israel agenda, it is really downright chilling. So we're going to continue your calls after the break. Do others of you, do you agree with Liz?
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, we need you tonight. We need you tomorrow. And we certainly need you, everybody, to pray for New York with Zohran Mamdani about to take over. He's now in Puerto Rico at this Somos political convention. Democrats have it every year. He's over there. And if you could see the images, he was treated like the Beatles arrived, which is really frightening to those others who support him and believe in his crazy policies. He's a rock star to them, and that could be very dangerous. Earlier today, we were talking with a New York State Senator, George Borrello, who he equated Mamdani to like a cancer, and he said his policies are spreading all over New York and elsewhere. And that is a big concern because a lot of his policies are downright troubling. Don't get deceived by the big old smile. Here he is. I just want to play a couple clips because we just heard from Liz in Florida, who said she's scared to come to New York. As a Jewish individual coming to New York, she said, under Zohran Mamdani. Here is Zohran Mamdani not that long ago talking to a crowd, rousing up the crowd. and blasting military aid to Israel. Let's not forget, this wasn't that long ago.
Hello, everyone! Who is ready to end U.S. military aid to Israel? Who is ready to end $3.8 billion in annual military aid? My name is Zohran Mamdani. I am the assembly member for the 36th district here in New York State. That is Astoria and Long Island City. And I am proud to be here at this protest. I am proud to stand unapologetically for the freedom of Palestinians. It is at the core of my politics.
It is at the core of his politics. Him being anti-Semitic. I'll give him that one. And here he is, another one. Let's not forget this. This was 2 years ago. He's the speaker at the Democratic Socialists of America convention. And somehow he wove his hatred of the NYPD and wrapped it around the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. Here's another one of his best-selling hits.
You know, I think in the first question, there is this setting up of a context where this idea of hyper-local and international. And I think that for anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyper-local. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. Right? We have to make, not specifically that example all the time, but just to say that for working class people who have very little time, who have so many stresses, who are under so many pressures, there isn't that much time for symbolism. We have to make it materially connected to their life. And I think that what opportunity we have is that we are in a country where those connections abound, especially in New York City. You have so many opportunities to make clear the ways in which that struggle over there is tied to capital's interest over here.
Isn't that lovely? That's what he said, speaking to the Democratic Socialists of America. We just talked about all of their crazy policies that they unveiled, and they said this is what they believe in, where they will hold the, quote, Mamdani administration responsible to divest funds from Israel bonds and securities, to withdraw city funds from banks that lend money to Israel or do business in Israel, end city contracts with companies that do business with Israel, operate city-run grocery stores free from Israeli products. They won't even sell an Israeli product. And they don't want any cooperation with Israel and the Israeli Defense Forces, which are some of the best in the world by far. There's a lot of like cohesive training and sharing of information between Israel and the NYPD. That's going to end under Zohran Mamdani. I mean, that's dangerous. It's downright dangerous because they provide a lot of important intel. So that won't happen. I mean, that's scary. There's a lot of well beyond it being completely anti-Semitic and horrible. It is downright dangerous. And here is Professor Alan Dershowitz with his take on the fears of Zohran Mamdani.
I mean, we obviously accept the results, and the results really came from two places. One, Sliwa refusing to get out, although that alone wouldn't have changed the outcome. The other is these self-hating idiot Jews. 30-something% of them voted for a man who doesn't really regard them in many ways as first-class citizens, who complains when Jews get together and exert their power in order to help the Jewish people or help the nation state of the Jewish people. You know, this guy is not only a domestic anti-Semite, he's an international anti-Semite. He says he won't recognize Israel because it's Jewish, but he recognizes how many Islamic states, for example, Saudi Arabia won't allow anybody to become a citizen unless they convert to Islam. Qatar will not allow a Christian to buy a New Testament. But he recognizes all those states, but no, try to be a Jewish state, and it doesn't pass the Mamdani test. Why? Because the Democratic Socialists of America say you can't belong to our party. Remember, he won as a Democratic Socialist. That's what he voted. He says you can't belong to our party unless you don't believe that Israel has the right to exist. Forget about a Jewish state. The right to exist at all. That's on the platform of the Democratic Socialists in America, as long as you have to commit yourself to BDS, boycotting only Israel, no other country in the world. So this is a bad guy, and it's a great city, and we're going to survive, and we're going to start thinking about who should run against him even now to make sure that there's always pressure on him not to do the terrible things he would like to do.
Bad guy in a great city. Let's go to Sandra in nearby New Jersey to New York. Go ahead, Sandra.
Well, first I wanted to say I will continue to go to the city and not be afraid. That's the truth. Every Saturday I go to the city. I look forward to that day, and I'm not going to let anybody stop me from having a nice day.
Good
now,
for you.
God will tell me when to not go. But for right now, I'm going. I'm not. They teach you don't give in to the terrorists. I mean, come on, we're overdoing it. Maybe. I don't know for sure, but I'm saying I continue to go on with my life. I don't let people stop me from doing what I enjoy. That's how I feel. I did want to say one thing. I didn't get a chance to listen to his acceptance speech because I was concerned about New Jersey that night. But I sat down tonight and I decided to sit there totally objective, like not with all that I know, and just like neutral. And I sat there, and I got to tell you, if I didn't know better, if I didn't know better, I would have been maybe, oh my God, this guy's great. He was so amazing in how he speaks. He's like AOC, another one like that. And
yeah, he's a good deliverer, right? You're talking about performance, yes.
Absolutely, and this is my concern, that he gets a lot. Even if I didn't know any better, I think, oh my God, this guy sounds great. But we know better. But what he said in the speech, I didn't like. He divided people. He's teaching the young people right away to disrespect the president. That was very painful to listen to. And then he was speaking about jobs, less desirable jobs are not good to have. John Hannity started out as a dishwasher, a house painter, and he said those jobs helped him shape his work ethic. Now, that's what we teach people. You start from the bottom, you work your way up.
I just want to go back to your point about the divisive, Sandra, because that was a powerful point. You know, it's interesting. And I was surprised. We were covering it on election night and we listened to a bit of it, but I didn't hear all of it. So I ended up hearing all of it then afterwards, because the news junkie that I am, you guys know, and the political junkie that I am, I ended up later that night after I was off the air with all of you guys, because I was in the throes of it, remember, with all the results, and we heard quite a bit together. But then I went back and I listened to the whole thing. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how divisive. I mean, that was not a victory speech. A victory speech is, thank you. I want to thank the other people who ran because they clearly, care about New York City. We're all going to work together. I'm going to represent everybody. I'm so honored. It was like Trump is the worst. There's Islamophobia, and I'm going to fulfill my democratic socialist mission. I'm Muslim and I'm declaring my socialist mission, is what he was saying. He kept kind of using those phrases. There are a lot of great Muslims out there that are not democratic socialists, and I know some of them, and they are concerned about him because they feel like he's like declaring almost war. I mean, it's a very strong, harsh language. I've never heard a victory speech that was so nasty and provocative and concerning, like almost incendiary is the best way I can describe it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. He says in his speech, before politics was done to us, now politics is something we do to us. He was like mean, like everything that has been happening in the past wasn't good, but he'll make it perfect now. No, he's just a bad seed, and we got stuck with him. And I wanted to say one other thing. The way they trained him and the way they're training AOC, they have her out in the field. That's what we should be doing with our side. I don't see us picking people who have talent like that and developing them so they can become competitive with it. See, if we pick someone like him on our side, someone young and peppy like that, maybe we would have had a chance. But
I agree. I agree. I mean, obviously, by the way, Sandra, there were a lot of problems in the anti-Mamdani group. We've talked about it. Clearly, they should have been unified with one candidate against, Zohran Mamdani.
Right.
They split the vote, and that was a fatal flaw.
Mistake.
Huge mistake. They should have combined forces, and it should have been one candidate against him. And then I actually believe there was a very good chance we could have toppled Mamdani at that point. Absolutely. But if you split the vote, it's not rocket science. Clearly, that had an enormous impact, and you're splitting the fight against each other, and you should be focused on Mamdani. That 100%. And that was one of the big travesties too. And then ranked choice voting, was the big travesty if you go all the way back to the primary too. And Cuomo didn't see it coming even in the primary too on the Democratic side. He got his butt kicked in the primary by Mamdani. And then he had to deal with all these other people that were coming up against him, and including, at the end of the day, obviously it was split, and that was a huge mistake in the vote. That was a huge mistake. And, we ended up with Mamdani, and that's a travesty. And New York will pay a dear, dear price. Sandra, thank you very, very much. Let's go to Steve in Brooklyn. Line 3. Go ahead, Steve.
How are you doing? I love you so. I have 4 quick points to make. One thing, as far as I know, we received support from Iran. Please check it out. My computer does not work. I got this information from a person who got it from the internet. Please check it out whether he really gets support from Iran, number 1. Number 2, the contract between him and New York. He promised one thing. He said the contract, if he delivers the promise, then he can become a mayor. He promises he will reduce New York expenses. He will make New York more affordable.
Yeah, do you believe that? If you believe that, Steve, I know you're from Brooklyn, then I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. If you think that he's going to drive out business, he's already asking for money for the transition team, which is why it's so ironic that he's already asking for funds. But your point about Iran and all these other things, there may be some interesting questions about where his money's coming from. And the Department of Justice, they're looking into it. So let's see if there is anything there. Boy, would that be interesting. Let's go to Al in New York on line 1. Go ahead, Al.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. To make a quick, the previous call, not the one before last, she said about redesigning the strategy of the Republican Party. I think they should take a lesson from the way the Democrats work. They should infiltrate the party with permanent spies, figure out what kind of tricks they use, the campaigns and the methods, secret methods, and start implementing it. Even if it's not so straight, as long as it's legal, do the same thing. You're fighting a war. If the communists take over, if they take over, and the socialists, they can take away the money from the people who have it and give it to the other people. I mean, that doesn't work. You know that, and I know that.
Yeah, but you know, it's an interesting point, Al. And Sandra, who just called, who you're referring to, she made some great points about the fact that you got this young, spunky guy who gives a good delivery. Obviously, I think many of his messages.
Do the same thing, then.
They're exactly. But imagine, Al, if you have somebody who has sort of that style, like a him and an AOC. I'm not agreeing with their policies whatsoever. I'm just talking about their style. And you have that, but you have somebody with great policies, with common sense policies that aren't anti-Semitic, that aren't Democratic Socialists of America. You're right. That would be an absolute home run. And the Republican Party needs to start looking at people like that. There are some impressive folks in the Republican Party, I think in Washington, who have that. But I think you're right. They could use more. There is no question, because this is clearly a verbal war. And these people, especially, the Democratic Socialists, they are in your face. They say their mission is to keep going around the country, that this is only the beginning. So you're right. The Republicans have to get up to speed. and find candidates who are equally articulate, equally charismatic, whether it's a man or woman, but also with a great common sense message. And I think that will be unbeatable if they can find that combination. I think you're spot on, Al. Thank you very, very much. Everybody, we're going to continue with your calls. 1-800-848-9222. But first, support our heroes.
The Rita Cosby Show presents Support Our Heroes.
And this is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Support Our Heroes segment with the powerful story from Edwardsville, Illinois, where a special quilt presentation to 100-year-old World War II veteran Jacob Miller was the highlight of an annual Veterans Day golf tournament, which took place a few days ago. By the way, his birthday, he turns 101 on November 18th. Hey, that's my birthday too. I'm a little younger than him. But anyway, veteran Miller, a U.S. Army veteran, fought in the Battle of the Bulge. How beautiful is that? How powerful. Of course, that was a German counteroffensive by U.S. forces in the Ardennes forest that launched on December 16th, 1944, and lasted 41 days. He was wounded and sent back to the line, and then he got wounded again. And after that, he came home and had multiple surgeries. After getting out of the Army, he married his wife Edith in 1945. They had been married, get this, for 80 years. What an extraordinary life, and how beautiful that he was presented with a special quilt. And again, he's going to be 101 years old coming up in just a few weeks. And everybody, all it takes is $11 a month. Donate $11 a month to the incredible Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Be sure to check them out. They do such amazing work to help heroes and their families at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Rita Cosby Show, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And everybody be careful again. Tomorrow there will be cuts at flights at 40 major airports across America. Some of the biggest ones, especially many in the New York area, also Chicago, O'Hare, LAX, Phoenix. And then it's going to go to a 10% cut. So be careful. Check your flights. Because it is going to be a mess tomorrow. And yeah, it's a mess in New York City. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Let's go to Mark in Manhattan on line 3. Go ahead, Mark, your thoughts tonight.
Yes, Rita. I would point out to the public that Adolf Hitler was a spellbinding orator and speaker publicly as well, and that initially he came to power by being elected democratically in Germany. And how did that work out when he finally revealed his fangs, his devil's fangs, with all the hatred that he released on the world?
No, great point. By the way, Mark, you're right. I'm not going to necessarily equate Mamdani to Adolf Hitler, but what I will say is Mamdani is definitely a wolf in sheep's clothing. But if you listen to the verbiage, his verbiage is anti-Semitic. It's dangerous. And you're right, you can't get fooled by the charisma. Listen to what he says, and let's see what he does.
The Rita Cosby Show
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.